Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. It's International Women's Day. We tell you how the world and Lethbridge is honoring it. Plus, they're calling it the Vengeance Van. We show you a rage room on wheels designed to help get out pent-up frustrations from pandemic lockdowns. And it's the interview everyone's talking about. We bring you commentary from the UK about Prince Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. The province says it will complete step 2 of easing its COVID restrictions. Effective immediately, they'll expand the capacity for retail from 15 to 25% of the fire code occupancy. This applies to common areas as well, such as hallways and food courts. In addition, youth, university, and college athletic programs can resume with a maximum of 10 participants in total, including coaches and trainers. Restrictions will also ease for child, youth, and adult performances, rehearsals, including dancing, singing, and playing wind instruments. However, no audience will be allowed. These can be live-streamed performances only. Banquet halls and conference centers will also now be allowed to include weddings up to 10 people and funerals up to 20 people. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the province is able to do this because over the past week, COVID numbers have fallen.
Said that we'd complete step 2 when it was safe to do so, and I believe that it now is. Over the past week, our daily case counts and our positivity rates have fallen. And thanks to the collective efforts of Albertans, our hospitalizations and our ICU admissions have gone down as well. And most importantly, fatalities continue to fall. And they should continue to fall as we vaccinate seniors and others that are at risk as fast as we get the doses in from the federal government. Just last week, I announced that we should be able to offer every Albertan a first dose by June 30th.
Health Minister Shandro says the next stage of easing restrictions will be assessed on March 22nd. The Alberta Court of Appeals has ordered a third trial for David and Colette Steffen. The couple was originally convicted and then found not guilty in the death of their son Ezekiel. Today, Alberta's top court granted a request by the Crown to overturn the 2019 acquittal. In 2012, the Steffens were accused of not seeking medical attention sooner for the 19-month-old who died of bacterial meningitis and a lung infection. Lethbridge police are seeking the public's assistance in identifying a suspect in a robbery of an 81-year-old man at a business on Sunday. Police say that around 1:30 p.m., the senior was pushed aside as he was trying to pay for his purchase at a business in the 500 block of 13th Street North. A man grabbed the cash the victim had put on the counter and attempted to leave in a blue-colored Ford Escape, but the victim followed the man out of the store and reached into the open window of the car. The driver put the vehicle into reverse, and a witness pulled the victim away so he wouldn't be hurt. The vehicle fled the scene and was later discovered abandoned in the 2000 block of First Avenue North. If you can identify the man from this surveillance footage, contact police at the number on your screen. It's International Women's Day, and a new poll shows that Canadian women have a very different view of gender equality in this country than men. The poll finds 63% of respondents believe equality between men and women has not been achieved. Of those, 73% are women who think that equality hasn't been achieved, compared with 53% of men. A report by the Labour Market Information Council says the pandemic has dealt the hardest economic blow to low-income women. And it wants Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland to address the issue when it comes to any federal efforts to aid in a recovery. The report finds employment for women running about 5.3% below pre-pandemic levels, compared to about 3.7% for men, mostly due to the hit the food services and accommodation sectors have taken. In addition, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the pandemic has been especially hard for women who are leaving the workforce at a higher rate than men and often taking on greater share of childcare duties. One woman who has made a major impact right here in our community is Lethbridge's only female city councilor, Belinda Crosand. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly spoke with Crosand about some of Southern Alberta's biggest trailblazers and what more needs to be done for equal rights locally.
Lethbridge currently has one female who sits on city council. If you don't already know her from years of working within the community, her name is Belinda Crosand. A longtime advocate for gender equality, Crosand is passionate about giving all voices a seat at the table.
We know it's vital to have different perspectives around a table, to bring different ideas to it. And what's fascinating is not only is it the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
Tuesday, she'll be bringing forth a motion to council stating that the municipal workforce should reflect all faces of the community, not limited to ethnic diversity and gender.
When we do not reflect women in workforce, or we do not reflect the cultural and ethnic diversity, we're actually hurting everybody. We're not bringing the best ideas to the table. And things like International Women's Day just reminds us of the work we need to do.
17 years of her career was spent working with the Galt Museum and Archives, and Crosand continues to uncover new truths with the Lethbridge Historical Society. Southern Alberta has a rich history of female powerhouses, and Crosand shared some of her favorites.
Maya Netz, she went to school here in Lethbridge. There's a beautiful picture of her in grade 2 sitting in front of Westminster School with her class. She then went on to the University of Toronto, was the first woman president of the Mathematical and Physical Society at the university when she was an undergrad, went on and got her master's and her PhD, and was the 6th woman in Canada to get a PhD in physics from the University of Toronto, raised here in Lethbridge.
There's still lots of work to be done, but Crosand is up for the challenge.
The fight will continue, and we need to continue the work.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Thank you, Ainsley. Another woman making a huge difference in our community is Dr. Sophie Kernies, a microbiology researcher at Lethbridge College. She studies the side effects of antibiotics and explains why we're seeing an increase in antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
We have used antibiotics since 1940, so a long time. We have selected antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and we have more and more. If we use more antibiotics, you will select more antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And this bacteria, I need to add 2 more things. One, they divide very quickly. So for E. coli, it will be 20 minutes. So imagine that. And the other thing is that they have a very big, high plasticity, genetic plasticity. So they can exchange genes basically between each other.
You can catch that full interview with Dr. Kernies coming up later on in our show. Thousands of women marked International Women's Day with a march through the center of Kiev, Ukraine. Organizers wanted to draw attention to domestic violence, which has risen sharply as the government imposed restrictions to block the spread of COVID-19. Spain's Constitutional Court rejected last-minute appeals by unions and women's rights groups to hold any kind of street protest in Madrid due to health concerns. In other news, the sport of airsoft has been around since the mid-1970s. The Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, introduced new legislation for Bill C-21 in February. This bill would prohibit the importation, export, and sale of airsoft guns that are designed to look like real firearms. As Micah Quinn explains, a local airsoft business owner is worried that if this bill passes into law, it will have a huge impact on his business and others around him.
Squeeze the trigger.
Lance Secretan is the owner of the Coliseum of Lethbridge, and he says that if Bill C-21 becomes law, that would mean thousands of dollars of merchandise in airsoft equipment that would be useless.
And also people would, at the very least, have to be laid off because you don't need the extra employees to run those types of games. Worst case scenario, businesses would be shut down completely. And that's nationwide, not just us here.
The game of airsoft features 2 teams that are looking to tag each other, and the last team to not get hit wins the game.
It's also a group of friends having fun together. It's building social skills, teamwork, I know it's a huge stress reliever in these times where people can get out and just enjoy themselves and forget about the day-to-day problems that we have.
Bridge City News reached out to the office of the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, for further clarification on the legislation regarding airsoft guns. We received an emailed statement saying, quote, "Clearly the legislation we bring forward is not targeted at the recreational use of these devices. It's about their appearance. They are prohibited based on the fact that many of them are designed to look exactly like a real firearm. And that's the problem that law enforcement has identified to us. And that's the reason these devices have been used in crimes and are a real concern for public safety." And so, I think that the clarity is in the legislation. What is being prohibited are those exact replicas of these firearms that are virtually indistinguishable from the real thing. I've heard from some of the retailers that the exact image and replicating the real thing is just part of the fun of these things. But quite frankly, I think we have to strike a balance, and we have to consider the impact on public safety, and I think that's important to listen to law enforcement. End quote. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Lethbridge School District is launching an e-learning pilot project for students from grades 1 through 8. The project is described as assisting students at any time and to their own pace. The school district says the pilot project is set to run for 1 year and that it differs from the current online learning available.
They will be able to participate in options if they choose at the school building, and they will also be able to participate in school sports as well. So what's really fantastic about this program is even though they are online, they are tied to a school community. So for our elementary students, their school will be our new elementary school, Dr. Robert Plaxton in the south side, and everything will move through that school. And then for middle school students, their home-based school will be Senator Joyce Fairbairn on the west side. One thing that we have learned is there are students who learn differently. Everybody learns differently, and some students thrive within the school context, and some students have actually thrived within the online at-home context. And so it's really important for us to listen to that and look forward and see how we can engage those students better and give them the quality education that they deserve.
Parents who are interested in applying for the pilot project must do so by March 23rd and visit the Lethbridge School District website. Alberta Health Services has once again been recognized as a top employer in multiple categories, including Canada's Best Diversity Employers, Canada's Top 100 Employers, Alberta's Top Employers, Canada's Top Employers for Young People. These awards recognize leading organizations who are offering exceptional workplaces for their employees. Thousands of companies are invited to submit applications for a place on each year's list. The Lethbridge and District Music and Speech Arts Festival is celebrating its 90th anniversary in our city this year. The goal of the festival is to give amateur musicians and speech artists the opportunity to perform for an adjudicator and have the chance to win scholarships. Due to COVID-19, the festival had to be moved to an online format. Megan Wittig, the general manager of the festival, says that last year's performance had been canceled 10 days before it started.
It has been kind of a trial and error basis of figuring this out. The provincial festival has been really supportive in helping us determine what might be our best option. So for this year, our competitors are sending in videos actually right now, and we will upload them for our adjudicators to view for 2 weeks. And the adjudicators will then write out comments like they usually do, and then they'll create video adjudications for the whole class so that everyone can have feedback. And that will be given probably by the end of March, and then we'll assign scholarships and awards and recommendations like that.
The online event called Stars of the Festival will take place on April 16th, where winners will be live streamed on the festival's YouTube page. There can be a lot of pressure on singles to get dating and get a partner as soon as possible. But according to Janice Regal, the author of Slaying Singlehood and the co-founder of Stirred Up Women's Ministry, it's okay to be single. It's just a season of life.
Especially people that are single, because you feel like your value is attached to your relationship status. And so to not cheapen this and this season of life and think that it's not valuable, because God has so much to do in and through you in whatever season you're in, but especially when you're single, because you do have, no one to answer to, and you do have more time and whatever. So just not feeling like this season doesn't mean anything or hold any value.
Janice Regal is also a podcast host of Just Janice. You can catch her full interview with Hal Roberts coming up after Business News. Calgary lawyer John Roggeveen has been appointed interim leader of the Alberta Liberals. The party has been without a leader since November, when David Kahn stepped down. The Liberals were once the province's official opposition, but currently hold no seats in the legislature. The brothers who founded We Charity have until Friday to appear before the House of Commons Ethics Committee. MPs voted unanimously this morning to summon Craig and Mark Kielberger to testify after initially declining to do so last week. The summons has legal force, and the committee wants to hear from the brothers as it looks at a federal agreement to have We manage a now canceled student services grant program. They're calling it Ottawa's Rage Room on Wheels. In a year of periodic lockdowns and pent-up frustrations, the mobile rage cage has taken off as a novelty recreation service amid the COVID-19 pandemic, offering a high-gear outlet for Ontarians to let off a little destructive steam with a rambunctious session in the Vengeance van.
People could end up breaking like literally anything, right? Like just looking around the shop right now, you've got like kids' toys, you've got glass dishes, picture frames. There's a cuckoo clock in front of me. It's random, and a lot of people really like that aspect. Like you can specify if you want to break a TV or a computer screen or something like that, but you could literally get anything. Like you could break a headlight for a truck even,
Well, I've been less active because of the COVID restrictions, but I still haven't been a little bit active, but this really helped.
Just being stuck inside and just being, it's been a year now, and it's just, there's been extra stresses and stuff, so to be able to get out and get some of that stress out and smashing stuff was great. Right? Did you guys find that helped? Yeah.
I definitely have seen an uptake since the lockdown started. People are very angry, they're frustrated, they're calling in and not venting necessarily, but they're letting us know like, hey, we really do need this, and we really appreciate that you're available.
Earlier today, hundreds of people gathered near the Minneapolis courthouse near where jury selection was to take place for the former police officer accused in the death of George Floyd. Chants included "Say His Name, George Floyd," and "What do we want? Justice."
We want to live in a world where people who murder civilians go to jail and face consequences. We want to live in a world where cops can't just do whatever they want in our communities.
Say his name! Say his name!
Prince Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey that aired last night in Canada and the U.S. included allegations that the couple encountered racist attitudes and a lack of support that drove the Duchess to thoughts of suicide. Meghan told Oprah Winfrey that when she was pregnant with son Archie, there were, quote, concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born. Harry says that he was shocked but refused to reveal who made those comments. Meanwhile, Emily Nash, royal editor for Hello magazine, says Meghan Markle's allegations of racism against the royal family are, quote, devastating for Buckingham Palace, while Nick Boulin, co-founder and editor-in-chief of True Royalty TV, questions the decision to conduct the interview in the first place.
What good is going to come of it? Is it going to make them feel better? In the long term, I think probably not, because what's about to flow out from this is, using the life of another film. I think they've unleashed hell. Who did this interview help? Apart from, Harpo Productions and the various broadcasters around the world. I mean, who has this helped?
I think the very personal admissions about his family, the state of the relationship with his father, and with his brother, I think they will have been very upsetting for both his father and brother to hear, and also, you know, fairly damaging. So it will be interesting to see what comes out from Kensington Palace and from Clarence House over the course of the next few days.
Should be interesting to see what happens. Well, we had increasing clouds this afternoon, and we could even see a slight chance of flurries overnight. We'll have a full look at weather right after the break. Stay with us. And welcome back. Here's a look at our weather. Spring definitely feeling like it's in the air with these mild temperatures. We reached about 8 degrees today. Medicine Hat also was a warm spot in our province at one point in the afternoon. Now, earlier I had said flurries expected tonight. That's actually coming up on Wednesday night. Overnight low, though, tonight -4. Into tomorrow, Tuesday, high of 6 degrees. Wind about 15 kilometers per hour. Not too bad considering where we are living. 8 degrees the high for Wednesday, lots of sunshine. And as I mentioned before, going to dip down in temperature Wednesday night, 60% chance of flurries. Into Thursday, overcast skies. That temperature still staying in the minuses for Thursday, -3 is the high. Then we're climbing to 2 degrees on Friday, and even more so on Saturday with sunny skies and a high of 9 degrees, and looking at a high of 7 on Sunday. So as we look at those lovely mild temperatures, other than that Wednesday night and dip to -2 on a Thursday, pretty much we're staying above seasonal averages for this time of year. Average high 4 degrees, average low -8. High temperature was in 2004, it was 19 degrees, and it was a chilly -38 right there in 2002. Sun rose this morning just before 7 a.m. at 6:59. Sunset tonight at 6:25 p.m. So look at that, we're going to be at 12 hours of sunlight pretty soon. Showers expected tomorrow and overnight in Victoria, high of 10 degrees, high of 12 in Vancouver. Lots of sunshine, fairly windy though, especially in the Straits of Georgia. Overnight tonight, flurries expected in Edmonton and into tomorrow, high of 5 degrees. 4 degrees expected tomorrow in Calgary under sunny skies and a wind of 15 kilometers per hour. Not so bad. Now, Saskatchewan, on the other hand, winter is still there. Regina is under a snowfall warning. In fact, 10 centimeters expected tonight, another 2 centimeters tomorrow. 0 degrees is the high there, -2 in Saskatoon. Showers expected in Winnipeg. As we look to central Canada, 11 degrees is our high for Toronto, and a mix of sun and cloud. Not so bad there. 7 degrees the high in Ottawa. And same thing for Montreal, a lovely 7 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. We look to Atlantic Canada. Fredericton's high, 0 degrees. We're seeing a lot of flurries happening in the Maritimes tomorrow. Halifax, 60% chance of flurries, high of 3. Charlottetown, also 60% chance of flurries, high of 1 degree. 40% chance of flurries tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland, and wind gusts up to 50 km per hour, -3 there. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Newly reopened shopping malls in the Greater Toronto Area are screening customers and using tracking technology to keep capacity at 25% under COVID-19 rules. A stay-at-home order was lifted this morning. Malls run by Oxford Properties are indicating on their websites how full they are so that shoppers know whether they should expect to wait to get in. Meanwhile, Cadillac Fairview Mall websites are showing the limited number of entrances that visitors can use. The union representing Manitoba hydroelectric workers has served the Crown Corporation with 48 hours notice of a possible strike. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers issued the notice yesterday. It posted a message to its members saying that from here, the union will provide 2 hours advance notice of a strike. Oil prices are rising as Saudi Arabian oil facilities were targeted by drone strikes just days after OPEC announced it would not increase output. Brent crude, which is the international standard, rose above $70 US per barrel for the first time in more than a year. Crude prices have surged more than 30% this year as massive vaccination campaigns gain momentum, potentially signaling the beginning of the end of the global pandemic. And now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 76 points to 18,458. The Dow was up 306.14 to 31,802. The S&P 500 was down 20 points to 3821. The Nasdaq was down 311 points to 12,609. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.04 to $65.05 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to $2.66 US. Gold was up 5 cents at $16.83 US an ounce, and silver was even at $25.13 US an ounce. Wheat is at $308 per metric ton. Barley is at $310. Canola is at $793. Corn is at $344 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 33 cents to $119.35. Feeder cattle were up 75 cents to $135.35. Lean hogs were up 13 cents to $87.30. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours at $78.93 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta Court of Appeal has ordered a third trial for David and Colette Steffen. The couple was originally convicted, then found not guilty in the death of their toddler. Today, Alberta's top court granted a request by the Crown to overturn the 2019 acquittal. Coming up, we hear from a Lethbridge College researcher who's making waves in the area of microbiology. She tells us why it's better to use phytobiotics instead of antibiotics on farm animals. That's coming up right after the break. Stay with us. If you've ever been seriously ill, you're likely thankful for antibiotics. However, they can have side effects, and we're seeing more and more antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which has researchers busy trying to find some solutions. Joining me is Dr. Sophie Kernies, a microbiology researcher at Lethbridge College. Prior to moving to Lethbridge, she was a tenured research scientist at the Pasteur Institute in Paris, where she developed a unique experimental model of a cell in the intestinal tract. Her published work is used all around the world, and we're so happy to have her with us today. Dr. Kernies, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. So first of all, can you explain what antibiotics are and how they're typically produced?
Okay, so antibiotics are molecules, drugs, like penicillin, for example, that are used to treat some bacterial infection. So it's something that is very important because if you have an infection due to a virus, for example, you will not take an antibiotic. These molecules are produced by bacteria and fungi. And so probably you have heard about penicillin produced by fungi or tetracycline. So this is what we have today on the market.
So can you tell us why we're seeing an increase in antibiotic-resistant bacteria? Why is this such a problem?
It's a big problem, and so I know that today we have a pandemic due to these coronaviruses, but the World Health Organization is basically pushing and to do something to avoid having another big issue with this antibiotic resistant crisis. And so the antibiotic resistant bacteria, first, they were always present on Earth. Even Alexander Fleming, who discovered the first antibiotic, the penicillin, was able to see them and to see this problem, but it was very, very mild. This antibiotic-resistant bacteria are bacteria that are not killed anymore by the antibiotics, and it's because they have mutations. But the thing that we have today is that because we have used antibiotics since 1940, so a long time, we have selected antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and we have more and more. If we use more antibiotics, you will select more antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And this bacteria, I need to add two more things. One, they divide very quickly. So for E. coli, it will be 20 minutes. So imagine that. And the other thing is that they have a very big, high plasticity, genetic plasticity. So they can exchange genes basically between each other. So if you have one bacteria that is resistant, it can go to another kind and another kind. So it's why we have now today with this big crisis due to this antibiotic resistant bacteria.
That is fascinating stuff for sure.
Yeah.
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 Now, for the last number of years, you've been leading a project at Lethbridge College called the Antibiotics Alberta Plant Project, which is focused on studying plants native to Alberta to see if they can be used to produce new antibiotics, right? So what specific types of plants are you looking at or looking for?
Well, I would say, all the plants that we have here could be interesting. And the reason for that is that, as I said before, the antibiotics that we have on the market are only produced by bacteria and fungi. And we know, everyone knows that plants have been used in a traditional way here by the First Nation people, but all over the planet, they were using the plants to treat, their disease, infection, or over disease. And so we took this approach of saying, okay, now we should take the plants and try to see if we could isolate some molecules, and that could be the next generation of antibiotics, because as we discussed before, antibiotic-resistant bacteria are a very, very big problem. And one of the solutions is to find more antibiotic, new ones, because it's kind of a run, the bacteria we will select more and more of this antibiotic-resistant bacteria, but if we have more and more new antibiotics, we can basically face these issues. So, yeah. So any plants could be a good candidate.
Definitely. So you were mentioning that they were used by Aboriginal people to treat sickness. So do we know for a fact if some of these plants were fairly effective?
So there are some reports and it's First Nation from here or from or in Canada or around the world. So yes, absolutely, they were using some plants like clover to treat certain type of infection. So of course, before we had not this test to say, oh, we have an infection that is due to a staphylococcus or something like that. So, but because wound, easy to see, it's for us, it's a bit easier than to say, okay, they have been using these plants to treat wounds. So we can suppose that this was because they were due by a bacterial infection or a fungal infection also. So we will basically, use this information and to guide a bit also our research.
Okay. So how can you determine whether or not a plant will be effective?
So we have some techniques that are now in the lab. They are well established in the lab. So we have been using this technique since 2016. So when we started the project at the college in Lethbridge. And so in a very simple way, you need to put a bacteria in contact with a plant. And we have a way to find out if the bacteria is growing. It's by measuring the optical density, but it's okay. So we can put the bacteria and the plants together and follow that over a period of 18 hours, for example. And then we can see that certain plants are basically avoiding the bacteria to grow completely. So you will have the same kind of result as the one that we could get with a known antibiotic like kanamycin that we use as a positive control. So so the technique is in place, and we have students helping us to do that.
That's incredible. So what kind of progress have you made so far? Have you found any molecules that could be used as antibiotics?
Yeah, we found some molecules. So this is also in collaboration with chemists. So we have a collaboration with Professor Raymond Anderson in UBC, who is helping us with this part of the project, because in science everyone has their specialty, and so the plants that are the most interesting for us are sent to UBC, and then they do the fractionation, and we were able to isolate some molecules from some interesting plants. So this is one of the contributions that we hope to get. So from all the plants that are tested positive for different bacteria, then we hope to get more and more molecules with the hope that after we will have an antibiotic.
That's fascinating. Now, I understand that you've found a new phenotype introduced by plants. So what is it and how can it be used for our health?
So this was observed more recently. So it was with students that are working in the lab. We observed that for certain plants, we see something that we call the clumping. Like an aggregate, like a big chunk of bacteria sticking together kind of around the plants. And so we have a student, Nadia, and who is from the University of Lethbridge. She's doing her own thesis with us, and she is very interested, and she wants to continue doing a master in the lab, so it will be great. And so we are studying this new phenotype as it would be interesting for different applications, such as trying to remove bacteria in the water. The contamination in the water, for example, in feedlots, but also the water that we have in the river could be eventually more clean with plants that are clumping, the bacteria, maybe over application in cosmetics. So this would be some opening for the future.
Right. Now, we're of course in southern Alberta, which is, agriculture is a huge industry here. So can you tell us about some local plants that apparently contain phytobiotics, which can be used to naturally promote growth in certain farm animals?
Yeah, so this is another. So we have different direction in the lab, and one of the direction is the phytobiotics, because basically, to give a very quick definition, they are plant extracts that have some activities, and so we are looking always for antibiotic activities. It's known that some plants like oregano or thyme are used to prevent the infection, and we want to basically bring some new phytobiotics from the plants that are growing in Alberta, but also the plants that are given to the animals. And the reason for that is that the farmers don't have access to antibiotics since 2018 to prevent the infection as they were doing before, which is causing quite of some issues, because the antibiotics are helping them to prevent infection and also to promote the growth of the animals. So by finding, and we have many plant extracts that are active against, for example, Staphylococcus aureus, that is one of the bacteria that they want to control. We want to bring that to the farmers, that they can continue to produce the food, the food animals, or to produce the proteins that we need to feed us, basically. Yeah? So this can be an interesting project to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Dr. Kernes, your research also has the possibility of using plants to make natural preservatives for cosmetics. So which plants would be used for this, and what is it about them that would act as a preservative specifically for cosmetics?
So cosmetics. So we are in collaboration with a small cosmetic company in Alberta, and so we are thinking and exchanging this problem that they have. Cosmetics is we put makeup and cream, and so we basically put your hands on the cream and put that on your face, and your hands are containing a lot of microbes. So basically it will contaminate the product that can have some effect on the life shelf of the product, and also can eventually cause some infections. So they are using preservatives in their products like paraben, but we want to try to find some more natural approach for that. So bringing the plants that we have found in the lab that contain some antibiotic activities to them, and putting that in their product. So we hope that in the very near future, we'll be able to bring that and have a line of cosmetics containing some natural product coming from Alberta. So this could serve the cosmetic here, but after that, maybe a bit wider around the world.
Oh yeah, well, I would be all about that, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's what the people want to go more natural, not having some chemicals that can cause some issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So any idea how
Yeah.
long this process would take to find these, natural effective antibiotics? How long would that take?
Well, depending. If it is an antibiotic that, like penicillin, for example, just to give you an idea, for Alexander Fleming, it took him 12 years, which was the first thing was because, this was the starting point. So he had to convince people. But, and we see with coronaviruses, with the vaccine, it takes time to put a drug on the market because we want to make sure that it's really, really safe. So maybe it will take normally it's about 10 years, but I think it's still very important that we start today to have some antibiotics in the near future. If it is phytobiotics for animals, I think it can take much less time. We hope to, feed the animals with this product, with these plants. And for the cosmetics also, maybe, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years, and we will have some plant extract in for the livestock or for the cosmetics.
Yeah, that would be so interesting, especially if we can see it available at our local pharmacy. So even in terms of a plant-based antibiotic, any idea as to how long we can see that available at our local pharmacy?
I don't know, hopefully 10 years maybe, and we have to start, and this is the World Health Organization who is pushing to say, okay, we need to find new antibiotics because the pharmaceutical industry basically quit a bit this topic because it's not very rewarding in terms of money. You develop an antibiotic, it's quite expensive, and then you will have antibiotic-resistant bacteria coming up quite quickly. But still, we don't want to arrive to this situation where they say that if we don't do anything by 2050, we will have 10 million of people dying of this antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is huge. Today, we have 700,000 worldwide, which is a lot, less than what we had for COVID. But we need to do something today.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Thank you so much for your expertise, Dr. Kernes. Dr. Sophie Kernes is a microbiology researcher at Lethbridge College. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Janet.
Are you single? If so, it seems that there can be a lot of pressure on singles to get dating, to get a partner as soon as possible, and to get married. But is putting a rush on that really necessary, and is it the best way to go? Joining me now to talk about singlehood a little bit further is Janice Riegel, the co-founder of Stirred Up Women's Ministry, the podcast host of Just Janice, and author of the book Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season. Janice joins me now from Michigan. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here as well. So Janice, how would you best summarize your book, Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season?
Well, I think the tagline summarizes my book the best, celebrating life in every season. And for me, currently being in a season of singleness and just learning to embrace all that God has for me during this season and to not rush out of this season. Like you said, sometimes we're in a season of life and we feel like we're just constantly waiting for the next thing. And so for me, this book talks about what to do in the season of life that you're in, whether you're single or not. Like I came up with the name Slaying Singlehood, but honestly, I've had a lot of married people read the book that have been like, this book is for everyone, no matter what season of life you're in, just learning and realizing that God has a purpose for every season.
Yeah, now does being single today carry the same stigma that it did in the past, that perhaps, hey, this person is undateable?
I think that's a stigma that's attached to singlehood. It probably always will be. But I do feel like culture definitely has learned to celebrate singlehood more. And there's a lot of people that are choosing to stay single longer. I think probably in times past, people, once you graduate high school or whatever, you feel like you have to settle down, get married, start a family. And I feel like nowadays culture isn't as pushy with that, so to speak. And so I think definitely culture is changing all around us all the time, but I definitely think there's more celebrating the season of singlehood now than probably there was in the past. Yeah.
Now, why do you encourage women not to cheapen singlehood or maybe even discount it?
I would say because I think a lot of times, like I kind of said, that like we kind of want to skate through whatever season of life we're in as quickly as possible. And especially people that are single because you feel like your value is attached to your relationship status. And so to not cheapen this and the season of life and think that it's not valuable because God has so much to do in and through you in whatever season you're in, but especially when you're single because you do have no one to answer to and you do have more time and whatever. So just not feeling like the season doesn't mean anything or hold any value. And for me personally, I've been single for 5 years now, and I have seen so much value and awesome things that God has done in and through my life. And so I just know from firsthand experience that the season of singlehood can be so beautiful and rich.
Now, Janice, do you also feel that maybe perhaps you're spending a little more time with the Lord now that you're single? You can focus on Him more?
For sure. This is such a sweet season of life. Just having him right now, and definitely, because my evenings are fairly open. I mean, I'm doing ministry and podcasts and things like that right now, but just having that time with him, and obviously eventually when God brings me a husband, we'll do that together. But yeah, the alone time where it's just me and him, and like sometimes I'll just go take a drive because I love driving. That's just like kind of one of my secret places, so to speak. So I just love getting in my car, taking off driving. It's just me and him with some loud music, spending time with him, whatever. So yeah, definitely.
Now, you suggest that rejection in a relationship can be God's way of really protecting us. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so rejection in a relationship. So I think a lot of us have probably faced relationships that we maybe thought were going to happen in our lives, and they either started and they were short-lived, or they just never started to begin with. And for me, I think just trusting the Lord that if a relationship that I think, it doesn't work out or doesn't pan out, just trusting his heart for me and knowing that he always has the best for me, and trusting that he does have someone in mind for us, and that, if he's made you that promise, that it will happen. And so if you find someone who you think may be a potential suitor or you could see yourself in a relationship with and it doesn't happen, just trusting his heart that, something that we might see as rejection, that God's actually just protecting your heart from heartache and from a relationship that he just doesn't see fit for your life, and just trusting that his ways are higher and his thoughts are higher, and just trusting his heart for you is a big thing for me.
Amen to that. Now, Janice, when a person is single, they often put a lot of time and energy into finding that partner, that life partner, or sometimes, they'll say, I give up. I'm going to grab a bucket of ice cream, some potato chips. I'm binge watching my favorite shows. I don't care. I'm packing on the pounds. I'm depressed. That's it. I'm out. Now, you actually encourage a lot of people not to be idle and to use their time a little more wisely. Can you explain?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, like spending time in God's presence and in his word are two huge things for me. And then from that place, learning to hear the voice of God and what he's calling me to do. And so for me during this season, I began a ministry called Stirred Up Ministries. And so I've been doing that for a few years and starting a podcast. And there are times when you get some ice cream if you need it. Like I've actually created an email for my husband just to like write him notes, let him know how I'm praying for him that day or whatever. And most emails, I realized after like a bunch of them, that they start out with, hey, how are you doing? I'm eating ice cream right now. And I'm praying for you about this. So like, whatever, if you want to have ice cream, have it, but just not letting yourself stay stuck in those moments of like despair, feeling like this is all my life will ever be, and just trusting the Lord in the process of your season, and knowing that he has things to do in and through you during this season. And so learning to hear his voice and just being obedient, whatever that is.
Listen for that still small voice. Now, Janice, for those who do isolate themselves, you say this is really the enemy. What advice do you have for those people who want to get themselves out there? As we often agree, no man or woman should be an island.
Yes, I love that phrase. I use that phrase a lot. And we know, like in Proverbs, I use that scripture at the beginning of that chapter where I talk about creating community, that it's unwise to be isolated. And obviously there's a difference between having that alone time with the Lord, and we need that. Like that is so crucial, because I can actually fall on the other end of the spectrum where I'm constantly surrounded by people. And I have to make sure I scale back at times and have that alone time with the Lord, but not not getting to a point where you're not surrounded by community. It's so important. We need each other to stay sharpened, to stay encouraged, to be able to call each other out and say, hey, like I've had so many friends that have been like, you're believing a lie of the enemy. And I'm, we're blindsided by him. I mean, like that's the art of deception, right? And so we don't realize that we're being deceived. And so just having people to pour truth into you and to champion you and encourage you. And so I would say find a good group of people, find a church to get yourself plugged into, find online communities. I know a lot of the world right now is still not allowed to meet or whatever. I'm fortunate to be in an area where I am able to attend church in person again, but if you don't have that, finding people, whether it's your neighbors or family, to surround yourself with and make sure that those are people that are pouring into your life in a good way. So, yeah.
Now, if you do find other people getting on your case for being single, you write, stop letting other people put their faulty appraisal on you. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I love what you said, like at the beginning of the interview, that sometimes, people can look at you and be like, well, what's wrong with her? Why is she still single? And I think it's so important that we realize that sometimes God has people in a season for a reason. Like God has called me to be in the season now for 5 years, which I like to jokingly say is 4 years and 364 days longer than I wanted to be single, but it's fine. And so just realizing that just because someone is single does not mean they're not worthy, does not mean that there's something wrong with them that you have to detect and figure out so that you can fix them so that a relationship can happen. And just not doing that to people, because our value is found in Christ, and he is the one that defines us and puts our value on us. And it's a high value that he puts on us. And so just not determining someone's worth based on the relationship status is so important.
Now, Janice, you talk about the importance of sexual purity, yet we live in a culture where hookups become expected almost. How can single Christians deal with that kind of pressure and temptation?
Accountability is huge. And I know that that's it's kind of a taboo thing for some people, not for everyone, but having that accountability, like for me, even right now, I've already started setting standards for when that relationship happens. Like I will not have someone in my home by myself, and people will think like, that's dramatic, that's drastic, but my purity is so important to me that I am willing to do those things, So just having accountability, having someone, even before you're in a relationship, like I have a prayer partner and I have mentors in my life that hold me accountable. So I would say accountability is huge, not just with sexual purity, but with your walk with the Lord on all sides.
So what advice would you give to someone who may have tripped up and compromised their sexual purity in the past?
The first scripture I think of, this is like one of my banner verses for my life. And it's those who look to him are radiant with joy and their faces will never be ashamed. So not letting yourself stay in that place or feel like you're dirty or you're unworthy. And there's a song by Natalie Grant called Clean. And it's such a beautiful song of just surrender to the Lord. And when you're in that place and you've surrendered and you've repented, like knowing that he truly does cast your sins as far as the east is from the west and he forgets them. So even a few weeks ago, I had a friend tell me that they were repenting over something that they were, asking the Lord for forgiveness for. And they had said, I've asked him like 3 times to forgive me. And I said to them, like the first time you asked for forgiveness, he forgot it. And the second and third time, he didn't know what you were talking about. So just realizing that God truly does forgive and forget. And I know that we are stuck in our human minds and that's hard to comprehend, but that God truly does. So don't stay in that shame, accept his forgiveness and let yourself walk free.
Is there anything a person can do while single to plan for marriage?
Yeah, there's so much you can do. And I talk a lot about a lot of those things in my book, but like healing from past hurts is huge. Like I think a lot of people enter into new relationships with baggage from their old relationships. And so for me, because I'd went through a very hard breakup in my past, dealing with all of those hurts and insecurities and the enemy lies and just letting myself, like Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, like letting myself be renewed, finding out what Christ says about me so that my identity in him is solid before I enter a relationship. And I've heard so many people that have platforms that talk about relationships, talk about that it's not God bringing like 2 halves together. It's 2 whole people that need to come together to have a healthy relationship. So for me, finding wholeness in Christ and satisfaction in my life now so that that pressure is never put on someone else, that, you know, you're my source of happiness. I've been waiting for you to satisfy, you know, the longings of my heart. I've already found my satisfaction in Christ. So that's huge for me. There's so much we could say about that, for probably talk for hours about that, but those are the immediate thoughts I have. Yeah.
So what have you personally learned during your years of being single? You said about 5 years now, that you can pass along to other people.
So a lot of things I already said. The biggest thing that I would love to drive home is just finding your identity in Christ, not in a relationship status, realizing that you are loved whether you're in a relationship or not. Like, God loves you lavishly, and the Bible says that his love can't be measured and that his banner over you is love. And there's just so much to do with the love of God. And when you really comprehend that, you live your life from a different place. Because you're not worried about what people think, and the fear of man, you know, leaves because you care more about pleasing him than you do people. And so for me, just being like totally sold out and surrendered to him, and maintaining that first love passion with him is what I would encourage anyone that is single to dive into.
Do you ever have any of your married friends put a little bit of pressure on you, saying, you know what, I'm going to hook you up with this really nice guy? Or maybe you've got, you know, a parent that says the same thing. This is a really nice boy. You guys get along well. You've got lots in common. Leave it up to me, honey. I'll take care of this for you. Almost like an arranged marriage. Do you ever have stuff like that come into your life?
I've had a few, and I know this probably sounds horribly shallow, but it's hard for someone to catch my interest. And so I think honestly, most people are like, I don't know anyone that's like, you know, fits your standards. And I'm like, well, geez. But so I think that's a lot of my story has been not really. I haven't had a ton of that. I have had a few, but it's just been like, okay, you're like a nice guy. You're, you know, a nice friend. But I haven't had that too much in my personal life, no.
Have to pray for a nice boy for you, a nice man for you that you can share a bucket of ice cream with and pray with, right?
Yes, peanut butter ice cream.
That's awesome. Janice Riegel is author of Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season. Thanks for joining me today from Michigan.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.